So the theme today we're going to be exploring is like anxiety and stillness, and how stillness can be supportive for anxiety, not as just like shutting off anxiety or something like that, but as a counterbalance to a mind that's racing or trying to figure everything out. The value of like sitting down and just breathing, and at times also sitting with some of the discomfort rather than pushing it away or avoiding it. And so there's a lot of value in this practice. So that's what we'll do for about 15 minutes. Finding any way to sit that feels good. You can close your eyes if you'd like. You can rest your gaze on the floor if that feels good, whatever makes you feel comfortable, safe. And starting with a few longer, slower, deeper breaths at your own rhythm, just to help the body arrive and settle. Whenever you feel ready, just letting go of any control over the breath and letting the body find a natural rhythm. And trusting in the wisdom of the body to breathe, and trusting the body's ability to regulate emotion. And maybe there's an intention you'd like to drop in at the beginning, can be helpful. Maybe remembering why you're here. And maybe there's also an intention to set down any of the unnecessary pressures that the mind likes to bring sometimes into things like meditation. Having to be a good meditator or be chill as fuck, whatever that might be. Just setting that down and really inviting in a sense of acceptance and kindness for how this body and this mind is right now in this moment. Really connecting to the cushion, to the mat. Kind of visualizing that each in-breath and out-breath is coming from the ground and returning to the ground. So much of modern life can be cognitive and head-driven. So it can be helpful to start by just connecting to the ground, particularly breathing deep into the body and connecting to this lower half of the body. Noticing these toes and feet. And the ankles and the shins and the calves. And the knees. How many times do you notice your knees in the day? The thighs, the upper legs, the quads. Feeling the sit bones, that sense of connection to the chair or the cushion. and allowing the thinking mind to fall to the background continually as we really bring this body and the breath to the foreground. Noticing if there's any holding in the face or the temple or the jaw, even the eyes. Or the shoulders, some of the favorite spots for anxiety to cling on to. So just letting go with whatever can be let go of. Noticing the arms, the upper arms, the lower arms, and the hands. And maybe that point of contact with the hands, either to each other or to the legs, wherever they are resting. Noticing if putting the attention there feels maybe supportive. Sense of connection. The hands kind of connecting maybe to the lower half of the body or the legs or to each other. For some people, cultivating samādhi or concentration, that's a very supportive, grounding touch. Softening through the chest, noticing if there's any holding, residual patterns of holding in the muscles, the stomach or the belly. And inviting in a sense of safety and trust and openness. And staying with this rhythm of the breath. Just like waves, riding on each wave of the breath. And maybe seeing if there's any joy or even just ease that the mind can find in this simple practice. Of being fully present for what's here. Without any modifiers or ifs or shoulds. Can there be a real simple form of happiness that can arise from just breathing right now? Maybe reflecting on how nice it can be to not have a screen in front of our face or to have to be performing or working or producing something. Can there be a joy in stillness? Not something contrived or forced. but a joy rooted in the heart and in awareness that's not fabricated. What does that evoke? Something which is unconditioned or unfabricated in the heart or in awareness. Is there a place where the mind can land and rest that feels like home? Has a non-doing quality to it. And it's in this place, in the heart, or the chitta, the heart mind, where this alchemy of the heart can happen. Where love and compassion can arise as a means of meeting experience. Whether it's a thought or a feeling or a sensation, they all arise and pass in this open and spacious heart. It means to remember. So what is it that you feel like you're remembering when you're coming home? Not a thought or a concept, but this presence of mind. Cultivating and training so that this starts to feel more natural. Rather than having to fabricate a self to rest in the heart, in the true home. Let's just spend another minute or two in silence. With the invitation always just to keep it simple and invite in a sense of rest and ease. Livia and I are on a roll over here. I got my alarm going off. She's knocking over tea. Really leading the vibe over here. So, I have handouts. So this is our last week of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And it's been really cool for me. Each week I get to find a new teacher to explore and listen to some of their talks. There might be enough. If not, maybe share one. This particular teacher, Yong Oh, well, I'll get to it in a minute. Here he is. So, the human mind has this capacity to project into the future, yeah? Which I'm sure everybody is aware of at this point. Evolutionary thing that has happened over time, and that can be a beautiful thing. You can plan things, be creative, do some of the miraculous things that we can do as human beings. And this planning ability has the potential to be hijacked by fear, competition, and greed, wanting, craving, needing things to be right, which can be uncomfortable. And in a capitalist society where like productivity is so prevalent, there can be, which I heard some of at the beginning, this perpetual need to be planning more or perfecting or getting better. It's like kind of like a disease in a way, a never-ending process. And in reflecting on it, I think the real risk in it is that it's possible to go through this whole beautiful life in this kind of trance of worry and concern about the future. And that can really lead to missing out on so much of life because the mind is always somewhere else. There's this famous Mark Twain quote, "I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happen." And some of them, of course, do, but how many, right? How many of these fears or worries or anxiety-driven thoughts? There's a futility in them. And so stillness, sitting still, is kind of this radical act of setting some boundary and being like, for this time, I'm not going to prepare or plan, or my mind probably will still try to do that. But my intention for this time is to actually not be productive, but to be still. And Yong Oh, teacher in this handout, he's Korean American. And he was a part of a training I did through Wild Heart. He was a guest speaker. And he shares that stillness is not about doing nothing, but it's about being fully present with what is. And I really like that. And I'm glad I read that quote, because sometimes it feels like what I want to do is do nothing. Just sit down and do nothing. And I do have forms of that. But I think with meditation, with this present of mind, there is this ask to be deeply here for whatever is present. There's no wrong way to do that. And this can be like medicine for anxiety. So that's really what I want to talk about today, how anxiety, how this practice can be kind of like medicine for that. And I'm going to use some of Yong Oh's kind of quotes and some of his talks that I listened to, and how we can kind of wake the mind up from this fever dream of anxiety. So I don't know how much I need to explain about anxiety, because I think people are pretty familiar with it. But surprise, surprise, this wasn't meant to rhyme, but it's on the rise. It is the anxious generation, right? That's what they're calling like the younger generations of our time. Being raised in the era of smartphones, not enough play and social interaction. But I'm like, I had a lot of those things or was free of phones and still managed to be anxious. So I don't know if that's really the only cause, but I think maybe for the uptick. And what I appreciated about, and particularly about what you shared, Katie, earlier too, was there's so many different aspects to it. And there's cognitive, there's emotional, there's physical, behavioral. it's not just the worries and the thoughts, but for me, the most common thing is like this butterflies in the stomach, this like unease kind of feeling that leads to the thoughts. So worry, anticipation, heart rate rising, behavioral things like avoidance or restlessness. So I don't think I need to go on forever about this because I think everyone's familiar enough. And so the Buddha taught about restlessness, didn't use the word anxiety, but talked about restlessness, particularly in the context of being one of the 5 hindrances, along with craving, aversion, lethargy, doubt. And again, I always come back to this, and I don't know why it feels encouraging a way to think like there's these Buddhist monks 2,500 years ago, and they're like worrying about shit, They're like sitting down and worrying about whatever monks or nuns worry about back in those days. It's just like normalizing, right? Like this is to be expected. It's part of human life. It's one of the things that the mind does. And there's a real cyclical nature, I think, particularly to like worry and rumination. And so there's this word samsara in Buddhism, which is kind of like the cycle of suffering. Buddhism has all these fun images. A cycle of suffering that we get trapped in. And I was listening to Yong Oh's talk while I was driving around today, and he talks about how anxiety can be like this endless wandering in the mind. And I was like, oh yeah, it really can be like that. I was reflecting back on working with a therapist a few years back who is she's a Buddhist, a Zen priest, lived across the state. And she knew I was like into Buddhism stuff, so she would always kind of play with me when I would like be repeating something. She's like, oh, I'm really interested into like how cyclical this feels like it is, which I think was her nice way of saying like, you're saying the same thing over and over again. You keep coming to the sessions with the same pattern. It's one of the weird things about therapy in a way, where you realize, oh, I'm coming here week after week with some of the same things, right? And so at the heart of anxiety for me is fear. There's this, at the core level of it, there's this unease feeling. And then on top of it, there's all the things my mind does to try to grapple with this basic and existential fear of just being alive and all the different forms that takes, and trying to fix it or avoid it or, yeah. And so the Buddha taught that restlessness or worry it's okay. It's to be expected, but to be consumed by it it prevents or it blocks wisdom. It blocks this certain clarity of mind when there's this kind of repetitive noise of worry. And to add aversion to it, to want it to go away, is common but not helpful. To add another layer, which we'll get to in a minute, pushing away, is actually just another hindering force. So he taught that rather than chasing material success or fame or other escapes or all these things that were already happening 2,500 years ago, he taught people to slow down and to cultivate what's called samādhi, which is this collectedness of mind, this stability, this open spaciousness for the mind, and taught that this is actually the real medicine for worry, and called it an awakening factor, one of these 7 awakening factors. And I think it's really a beautiful concept that there's these things that you can cultivate that will free the mind. And there's no hangover, and they don't cost money, and you can just sit on the ground and cultivate it. So this word samādhi means either concentration or unification of mind, depending on the translation. And the practice of samādhi is not about obliterating anxiety or crushing, I don't know, maybe some teachers will teach like this, but like crushing the mind or something like that. And actually the most common fuel for anxiety is wanting it to go away. And on the other side of that, healing arises from making space for it to be there, This is this kind of central theme that I want to explore today. Yong Oh says that our ground of liberation is love. And there's so many potential second arrows with anxiety. Many of you have heard me talk about second arrows. There's a first arrow of suffering and then another unnecessary layer added on top of it. So the aversion, why is this here? Not wanting it to be here. Shame, why me? What is wrong with me? Am I too sensitive? And samadhi involves recognizing and releasing the mind from these patterns of unnecessary friction with the anxiety itself. And so stillness doesn't mean no movement, but the stillness comes from the response or the orientation of the mind or the heart to what's happening. Releasing the mind from this pattern to want to push or pull or fix or control. And so the orientation in samadhi is actually to just let be. Not get caught up in the momentum of it, but also not push away from it. And to meet whatever does arise. And so this is a process. Like, I don't know if any of you notice, within any single sit, I notice that there's a process that goes through for me from the beginning to the end of it, where there is a settling that will happen. This is something I noticed really early on in meditation, where it was like, if I just sit here for a while, the dust will kind of settle down a little bit. And it's not from me doing it or pushing the dust down, but stopping messing with it and trying to do things. Yong Oh talks about a lot of his early struggles. In the talk I was listening to today, he talks about being moving to the United States at the age of 2. And a big part of his experience growing up was just like never feeling like he fit in, never feeling like he had a place, and always wanting to be different than who he was. And he said when he first sat down to try to meditate, it felt like I was being tossed and turned by my mind. That was a really good metaphor for how that can feel sometime, where it's like the mind is like spinning us in circles in a way. And there's also this process that happens over time, with patience, with practice, where the nervous system will start to settle, where the mind will start to become familiar with this feeling of deepening into the awareness in the body. And there's a process of healing that can happen. And all these parts of the body where fear is held, where maybe traumatic experiences have been held, can slowly start to be breathed with, then be met with compassion and be kind of brought into the mix. This is like one of the main reasons for me why I felt like I wanted to keep sitting retreats, because I realized like, oh, there's something happening here. There's some sort, I don't understand how or what, and I don't feel like I'm doing it, but there's something happening in my nervous system, and it's starting to feel a little bit more comfortable over time. And central to this is the view or the orientation of what I am meeting experience with. And surprisingly, starting with the attitude of like, I'm going to get so fucking calm right now, doesn't always work. But cultivating a mindset which is accepting, which is patient, and particularly which is not motivated by results, ironically gets results, if that makes sense. If the mind is accepting, is patient, is not trying to get anywhere, something can start to happen and something can start to settle. The body and the nervous system responds well to this attitude of the mind. And there's this, in this aversion that I think can be so common with anxiety, there's this battling with oneself. Because in the end, this anxiety is part of us. It's a part of who we are. And it happens on its own on its own accord. And it releases when the conditions are set in a way that feels patient and accepting. I've been having this experience for years now where I wake up every night at 3 or 4 in the morning, and sometimes I fall asleep, sometimes I don't fall back asleep, and damn have I struggled with that, right? Like, go lay on the couch, stare, mind starts spinning. Oh God, I have 8 clients I have to see today. It's 4:30. Here we go. It's 5 o'clock. It's like I'm already not sleeping, and now I'm just like suffering about not sleeping, which is making it worse and exacerbating it. And so a practice for me has started to be like, hey, I'm up. I don't have shit to do right now. It's like there's no pressure. I don't have to be at work. I can pick up a book. The sky's starting to do something beautiful outside. Really changing that orientation. And it's amazing how much that has changed my experience of whether I sleep or not. But I'm no longer struggling. I'm changing the orientation to that anxiety or to what's happening. And over time, not getting tangled up with it, not trying to push or pull it away, there can be like a release from the struggle and an acceptance of it in a way. And one of the things that Yong Oh talks deeply about and what he presented to the training I was a part of was the power of like ritual and devotion. And it was really compelling for me, and it was something I hadn't really stepped into that much in my practice. And he talks about and demonstrated for us his own ritual around practice, and it was so beautiful. There was so much honoring in his cushion and the space, and a slowing down and bowing and putting the head on the floor, and all these things that might seem strange to people who are not familiar with those practices. But I found it, I was like, wow, it's very powerful to watch. And slowly I have found my kind of own forms of that to bring into practice. And for me, what there is in that is a form of surrender in a way. It's like setting everything down, whatever's happening in my life, and taking this moment to just connect to my body and also to nature. Because really this word dharma, what it refers to is reality or truth or nature as it is. So I think there's something also powerful in having something or a way or a form of a ritual or a devotional practice in a way that can be something to surrender to, I guess. And having a faith that all of the beauty in nature and of this world around us is also here in the heart and can arise if we set the circumstances for it.